Welcome to Technology and Education Today. I'm Richard Smith.
And I'm Caroline Crawford, and we are coming to you from the University of Houston Clear Lake in Houston, Texas, USA.
And today we are discussing the typical questions that you might incur if you apply for a job as an instructional designer or an instructional developer. What are you thinking?
I'm thinking encounter instead of incur, but okay.
But to move the show along, what are you thinking?
Well, one would imagine that people would want to discuss with you what you know about instructional design. Just a thought.
Okay, so there's...
And training and
Okay,
aspects like that.
I think one typical question they might ask right away is, can you describe the ADDIE model?
ADDIE makes sense. Some people know a little bit about Dick and Carey. There are several models out there. They may also just say, instead of ADDIE, choose a model and tell me about it. Which one do you prefer using and why?
Okay. Now...
But much like you, I would choose the ADDIE model.
Yes, well, it's kind of popular.
Or my own. My own published model.
But this is not going to help the people get a job.
No.
So let's figure out another question that they might be asked. If you're sitting there...
Ask about training.
Such as?
What are your training experiences? When you ran into a problem while you were developing a training event, how did you deal with it? Tell me about the problem and tell me about the resolution.
Okay, so...
They're trying to figure out your personality is my impression. Who are you? Might you fit into the company? And what kind of working person are you? Do you work like myself? I work a whole bunch for short periods of time and I need a break. Bunch of work.
Okay, so
break.
so another question might be, what is your work style?
Oh, that's a good idea.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
How about, I think one might ask, or expect to be asked, can you describe your approach to instructor-based training as opposed to web-based training?
That would make sense because they are, well, I would suggest that they're a different approach, but perhaps other people don't. Although, on the other hand, you still do go through the basic instructional processes. You just have different outcomes, different deliverables. But that is a very good point. And why wouldn't people want to know your perceptions of it?
Okay, so the applicant should be prepared for that question.
It's a good idea. As well as you said with the ADDIE model, how do you go about developing different objectives? And if people have gone through traditional ID programs, instructional design programs, most likely at some point they're going to wait for you to mention that once you develop the objectives, the assessment should be developed directly
Okay, so there's going to be a question on how you develop objectives.
I would imagine so.
And then another question on your approach to assessment.
I would imagine so. It would make sense.
Mm-hmm.
As well as the analysis phase. How do you go about developing a needs assessment? What kind of outcome would you expect? If you have a problem, what are the aspects that you work through as human performance technology type question? How do you go about obtaining a needs assessment? What is that little gap analysis where when people desire an outcome and what's really occurring, what is that gap analysis? How do you come up with that process?
I think another area that the applicant can expect to be questioned about is how you get information from a subject matter expert.
Oh, absolutely. Good point. And how do you engage with people as well?
Well, you'd have to...
Piggybacking on your statement, well, how would you obtain information from an SME? Well, true, but how do you develop relationships with people? Not only the person interviewing you, but in general, can you discuss, can you converse on your beliefs about how you work with others? Like, are you an introvert or extrovert, and can you flip between the two at need? Not necessarily at will, but at need.
You know, another question always pops up, and these questions are not in any particular order, but how do you see...
Obviously.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years?
Oh, I ask my advisees that all the time, and I get a deer in the headlights look because it's such a silly, strange question. And I hate when people ask me those questions, but it helps as an advisor gauging how to help support the advisee. So it would make sense as someone who's coming on as an employee, what do you want to accomplish 5 years from now? where do you see yourself professionally?
Right, and that question, because if you don't have that information, then you probably don't have a career plan.
Well, I don't know about that. I don't have a 5-year plan because I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow. I might decide that I'm just going to go find a ship and sail away.
Yes, I'm expecting that.
But you expect that from me.
I'm expecting that to occur. Yes, absolutely. Another question that the applicant should expect is, how does your prior experience prepare you for the role that you are seeking now, or the job that you're
good
seeking
question.
now?
That's a hard question. Because really, how do you respond to that?
Well, you have to have had, you need to
It's
describe
kind of a
your.
duck question.
Well, you need to be able to describe your prior experience coherently
Succinctly.
and succinctly, and you also need to be able to describe your training for the position, your education for the position. You be able and not hem and haw when you do it, because an instructional designer or an instructional developer is a person that is going to have to work with other people.
Needs to be able to speak well.
Need to be able to speak well. Yes, definitely.
Well, and if you don't speak well, one may assume that you do not communicate well in general, meaning through writing, through the written word, through verbal means. Therefore, as an instructional designer or as a trainer, people who are developing audio and video files and written text, that could be an issue.
Another area that you can expect a question on is, and this is typical for many different types of jobs, but you should expect a question on describing a time when you faced a problem in instructional design, an on-the-job problem. What did you do to solve that problem?
That's another hard one. Because you really don't want to bash where you've been before.
Yes.
Why would you want to speak poorly about where you've been previously? But it's that fine little line describing the situation without negatively slamming the people or organization involved.
Absolutely. Another question I think that you can expect is, do you have a particular theory backing your ideas behind instructional design? Or do you borrow from learning theory? Because you never can tell when you're going to get a manager who is into this sort of stuff. And I've seen it happen. They'll say, well, how would you integrate Bloom's taxonomy into the development of the training that you are asked
Naturally.
to provide?
It should be integrated naturally. You need the knowledge and move up the food chain.
You don't have to answer my questions.
Okay.
It's okay.
Well, I'm just thinking.
Yeah, no, but
yeah,
you're right.
I understand your point, but
You're right.
but that's true. That is a good point. So many different models, whether we're talking about the ARC's or Kilpatrick's work or
Yes.
whomever, that is a very good point. All of a sudden they start throwing names out to, I suppose, either to check whether or not you know what you're talking about, whether or not you have a background.
Show off how much they know.
Or show off how much they know. It's like, really? Come on. I got better things to do with my time. But you do need to be conversant. That's a fair statement.
Absolutely. And another question that you're liable to get is to describe your work style. Now, that's a question that you could get for any position.
We talked about that just a moment ago, about how I like to work really hard and then take a break, and work really hard, take a break. Remember that?
You better have a coherent answer for that.
Well, it's an honest answer. I work really hard to get the job done and meet deadlines or exceed deadline, as in offering it beforehand. But then I need a break. My brain needs downtime too.
And speaking of downtime, I think we've reached the end of this edition of Technology and Education Today.
Yay, Dr. Smith!
I'm Richard Smith.
I'm Caroline Crawford, and we are coming to you from the University of Houston Clear Lake in Houston, Texas, USA. Bye!